Wililam Hague, I really can't wait to see you on the monitor, because you must be grinning from ear to ear.
Well, I think you can see me, and well, I'm not grinning. I'm hopeful. You know, as I've written in my column today, I feel relief that Boris Johnson didn't come back at the last minute. I feel trepidation that it's going to be a very, very hard time in government for the new team, and hope, though, because here we have this very diligent, competent, resourceful, thoughtful person who I've known, yes, for the last 8 years, and I've formed the opinion over that time that he would be a superb prime minister. And I think he will bring stability, he will bring hope, but he will have, yes, a stupendously difficult task to do.
Is it fair to say that you are his mentor?
Well, I don't think there's an official appointment to him.
We've appointed you.
Oh, you've appointed. Oh,
Yes.
Thank you very much. But no, I'm his friend. He is a good friend of mine, and since when he was selected as the candidate to succeed me as the Conservative candidate in Richmond, Yorkshire, 8 years ago, he's always asked for my advice about, you know, being a candidate and then being an MP, being a junior minister, being chancellor, and so on. I think he's outgrown his. If I was a mentor, I think he's outgrown his mentor now. So I don't know how much more advice he will need. But one of the great things about him is that he asks for opinion, for diverse opinion. He likes to be surrounded by people with different views who will have a discussion and put ideas to him. You know, so what we're not going to find with him as prime minister is a kind of groupthink or things not being adequately discussed beforehand. Which we've seen one or two examples of in recent times. Things will get properly discussed by somebody who thinks very deeply about things. And so that, whatever your political views, the fact we've got somebody from today like that as prime minister has to be a good thing for the country.
Yeah, I mean, William, there is no lack of different views in the Conservative Party right now. I mean, you know, he said unite or die, and you've said yourself that you feel some trepidation. Do you think that any division that there is currently is ideological? Because, you know, there were throughout the Conservative leadership contest, we saw what those ideological differences were on certain things like tax, for example. Do you think those differences are ideological or personal? Do you think he's managed to shake off the whole stabbing Boris Johnson in the back, in inverted commas, thing?
Well, there will always be people in politics who resent what happened before, of course. And yes, if you resign from somebody's cabinet, they're not amused about it, and nor are their followers. However, the Conservative Party now has a better chance than it's had for some years of uniting, partly because just this last few days and few weeks has ruled out most alternative ways of proceeding. I mean, for those who thought Boris Johnson was the answer to come back, well, we just discovered that no, there isn't the support for that. For those who thought there should be a radical change of economic approach, which Liz Truss tried to bring in, that has just been blown to pieces. So actually now it's probably, I think there is a moment for the Conservative Party to say, right, we've tried all the things that didn't work. Let's rally around something that will work.
Right. Kezia, the country is crying out for some stability, economic, political, every type of stability, really. Are you able to say that you would like that too, and that for the time being means Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister?
Well, yes, and I'm personally chuffed for William that he's got his man in post. And I do think, as you've seen already from the response of the markets, the world just feels a little calmer today than it has at any point in the past 6 or 7 weeks. Of course, he's got off to a very, very difficult and troublesome start with WhatsApp down. I don't know how government's going to function for the next
I totally agree with that.
few hours. It's not the most ideal circumstances. I mean, I say that in jest, but look, he's got 3 immediate priorities from my perspective. The first is to stabilise the markets, and we've seen some indications that that's happening already just by his existence. The second is to restore some party discipline. Now, that looks like that's happening as well, and think I would argue he might get a bit more of that if he were to call a general election, not for this side of Christmas, but for May 2023. And I think there's lots of democratic hygiene issues which are to his advantage in doing that. It would really put the heat on Labour, and maybe we'll come back to that. But the final thing he has to do is to rebuild trust in the political process, not because its absence of it in its own right is such an issue, and of course it is, but because of the immensity of the decisions he's going to have to take. So in abandoning all the difficult stuff in Liz Truss's mini fiscal statement, there are still £40 billion worth of cuts to come, and no consensus around how they're going to be taken. Only that all the other ideas we've had so far have been rejected. So there are points coming of division that could yet fracture the Conservative Party.
And who would you like to? I asked this with knowing that you are the former leader of the Scottish Labour Party, but who would you feel encouraged by if you saw them coming into the cabinet?
Oh, well, look, I thought about that this morning, and I'm going to put myself out there and say I would really like to see a return of Michael Gove, because actually I've got a great passion for housing. I want to see more houses built. I think building housing could be a real driver of economic growth. And I think Michael Gove got that at DLUC in the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities. I also think that for a Conservative, and remember I reject much of what the party stands for, he is a great reformer. I think he will drive things and get things done. And if you want to see rapid increase in the amount of affordable housing in the country, then I want to see Michael Gove back in that job.
That's really interesting. William, before we move off this, did you realise that he's the first MP from a Yorkshire constituency to become Prime Minister? Rishi Sunak. Ever in British history?
Just thinking about that, actually. Although, yes, okay, did I realise that? No, I realised a lot of things about him.
Yeah,
I tried, of course.
I know you did,
but failed utterly. Of course, yes, there have been Yorkshiremen who have represented other areas of the country who have become prime minister, but maybe not from a Yorkshire constituency.
No, you've got someone in. I just wanted you to celebrate that for a brief moment, William. Coming up, we'll talk about what else to expect from the new cabinet, what Labour's going to do about it, and what we'll remember about Liz Truss. This is Times Radio Breakfast with Stig, Abell and Aasmah with Service Now, using technology to make work better. Morning to you. In 9:19, we're talking things over with Wililam Hague and Kezia Dugdale. We'll talk about what Liz Truss is going to be remembered for. Just a quick note on Boris Johnson. According to the FT, he's returned to writing. He's currently finishing the manuscript for his biography of William Shakespeare, titled Shakespeare, The Riddle of Genius, that will examine whether the bard is indeed all he's cracked up to be.
Oh dear.
Using the phrase "the bard" for Shakespeare is one of my things that really winds me up. But that book, I'm sure, will also do that. But he hasn't written it yet. That's what he's doing at the moment because he can't be Prime Minister. Liz Truss is Prime Minister for about another hour. She's finishing the pointless cabinet meeting. Then she'll head off to Buckingham Palace and resign. Rishi Sunak said in his opening speech that Liz Truss led with dignity and grace through a time of great change and under exceptionally difficult circumstances. Kezia, the problem will be, I suspect, that those exceptionally difficult circumstances were caused by her and experienced by us.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't think history is going to be particularly kind about Liz Truss's tenure in office. And I think, what will she be remembered for? What were the issues that cut through? And two for me stand out. One is pork markets as a phrase which represents her sort of staccato talking style, her inability to communicate with the public, that awkwardness she carried in office, which is all really unfortunate. And the second one is perhaps far more serious, which is the economic collapse that happened on her watch because of her political ideology, which she spent her entire political life trying to take into power and then watched collapse before her eyes. I mean, I don't think she'll ever be forgiven for doing what she did to people's mortgage rates. I say that as somebody whose mortgage application took longer to process than Liz Truss had in office during the time that she was there. That feels very real for an awful lot of people, and I think those two things will be what she's remembered for.
William, can you scrabble together a legacy of Liz Truss that she could hang a hat on?
Well, I can find one or two things. Yeah, I mean, I've been very critical of Liz Truss, and I think there were terrible mistakes made over how she put her government together and over the famous or infamous mini budget. So I've really been more critical than of any Conservative Prime Minister ever. But can I find something positive? Well, behind the scenes, I think there's been a serious effort to improve relations with European neighbours, particularly Ireland. and to work on resolving the Northern Ireland Protocol. It remains a very difficult problem. It's not done yet. But there has been that quietly constructive and responsible approach behind the scenes that I hope the new cabinet team will now be able to continue. So if that comes to success in due course, well, she will have started that off. So I think that's the most positive thing I can think of to say.
Which isn't terrible. What about this argument, you alluded to it before, which is she's almost removed options in a good way for Rishi Sunak? Because there is you must know this, William, that there's been this strain of conservative thought, and it's sort of personified by the IEA think tank type approach, which is to say everything is all about markets. We must cut taxes. We must deregulate. We must do everything at rapid pace because it's the only thing that makes sense. Everything else is all nanny statedom and stands in the way of growth. That thinking was very, very strong on the side of the Conservative Party, and it's now been attempted. And at least in the current economic circumstances, it's been found to fail. Is that actually a positive legacy she can hand to Rishi Sunak? Because almost he can't do that now because the markets wouldn't let him anyway.
Well, it does help. The self-destruction of that approach in the last 6 weeks does help, as I mentioned earlier, to unify the Conservative Party. Of course, that's an accidental legacy from Liz Truss, which that's what you mean. But I think even you mentioned the Institute of Economic Affairs. I think they would say, I think they have said that although they're associated with a lot of these ideas, you have to do them from a position of financial strength. It will be very good to have substantial reductions in taxation, provided they're spread across the whole population. But you do that when your budget's in a really strong position and the economy is growing. So I hope the lesson isn't that these ideas are discredited forever. It's that you have to go about it at the right time and in a way which the whole country can get behind.
Kezia, let's talk about Rishi Sunak's wealth, because this is what a lot of people are talking about themselves. We've posed the question this morning, does it matter? And it is, even though we've tried to move on, this is the thing that people are clinging to. They do want to talk about it. Does it matter that he is as rich as he is, possibly the richest politician that we've seen in modern times?
I think it does matter, but perhaps not for the reasons you might assume. For one, I think it means he has to work harder to show that he gets it and that he understands what life is like for most people across the country. So he will have to double down with his team and with his message to make sure he can overcome the immediate assumptions people will make about a man who's not a millionaire, he's a billionaire in terms of the money that his family has. But I do think there's danger here for Labour as well in terms of how they tackle the issue of his wealth. I think it's fair to question the non-dom status of his wife, because that is a question of fairness. The public want to know that everybody pays their fair share of taxes and we all pay into the same pot, and we all benefit from the services that come out of that. If Labour make a mistake here and frame it just about his wealth and his extreme wealth, I think that will go down quite badly with the people that Labour needs to win over from the Conservatives. I don't think there's room here for, as much as some people in the Labour Party might like it, a class war, because actually the centre ground of politics, which will decide the next election, likes the idea of aspiration, of ambition, of getting on. They will like the story of the son of a chemist and a GP getting to the greatest office in the land. I think Labour has to be quite careful with that, but if it can frame it around fairness and around the rich paying their fair share, then they've got a real in to dent his standing here.
William, what do you think? I mean, we've had, rich, well-off politicians before. There are many people within potential cabinet who are also incredibly well-off, and it hasn't been as much of an issue as this seems to be. Presumably, this is because of the level of wealth that we're talking about here, and the fact that this is our Prime Minister after a very difficult time. Do you think it doesn't matter at all, or do you think that Rishi Sunak actually does have to be careful about how he proceeds?
Well, I think all the points Kezia just made are very fair points, but I think what really matters is what somebody is like. What is a person like about whether they're rich or how they handle their wealth, if they're wealthy. And, I know plenty of, I've met some of the richest people in the world in the course of being foreign secretary and so on. And we can all think of things we don't like about some of the richest people in the world. They can become arrogant. They can become exclusive. They can be, they can just expect everything. They can think they own even more than they own us all and the whole world. And none of us like that attitude. Rishi isn't like that at all. You wouldn't know that he was a wealthy person, really, talking to him. He doesn't flaunt things. He's not bling in any way. He's not.
What about his Prada shoes that he wore? Where was that again? To a building site?
Yeah. Well, come on. I buy Prada.
Do you know?
Of course you do.
Lovely.
Yeah, of course he does.
Terrible confession on the London is full of people walking around in Prada shoes, and it was.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but didn't we wasn't a great mistake made though when Liz Truss's campaign pointed out she's just got cheap earrings on, and anybody who voted on that basis, they did end up making the wrong choice in that election.
I think that was Nadine Dorries.
And I don't think people will worry about where he buys his clothes or how rich he is if he is a successful prime minister.
Wow.
And when they understand what sort of person he is and what his family are like, which are really very utterly approachable people who don't, they're not people who flaunt wealth or cut themselves off from people of all incomes. Rishi is such an assiduous constituency member of parliament with people of all backgrounds. And that's what he's really like. And therefore, I don't think it's of human interest to people. I don't think it's going to be the decisive thing in his fortunes.
Really interesting stuff from both of you. As ever, great to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Wililam Hague, formerly Tory leader, of course, and used to sit in the seat now held by Rishi Sunak, mentor to him, although he may have outgrown it now. He's Prime Minister. And Kezia Dugdale, former leader of the Scottish Labour Party, both Times columnists. Last word on the riches from Claire goes, I'm baffled why some people question Rishi's wealth, yet accepted Boris using our money for his wallpaper and cadging holidays he can't afford. I know which one I'd trust more as a friend. You can keep your thoughts coming in. Loads of you have an opinion on this. 87222. Start your message with the word Times or tweet us at Times Radio. Our business correspondent, Dominic O'Connell, is back in the room.
Yes, it's 9:29.
Times Radio Business Bulletins with Ford Pro. Maximise business productivity with vehicle charging solutions. Search Ford Pro to find out more.
Right, now the reason you're back, I bet it's about bond yields, isn't it?
You're right.
I see you and I just think bond yields.
Good. I'm glad about that. Not wanting to sound like a stuck record, but interestingly, bond yields, which was one of the reasons that Liz Truss lost her job, have actually fallen again this morning, and not many people I don't think were expecting that. Not by much, 3.8% to 3.7% on the 30-year yield. But it seems that the markets really are smiling on Rishi Sunak. People weren't expecting that. Now, the significance that we're now back exactly where we were the day before the mini budget, September the 22nd. So we've moved back to
it's like it never happened. Brackets, I know many people are feeling it.
Well, if we get another 0.1% fall, 100 basis point fall to 3.6%, it'll be back where we were on September the 6th. It'll be as if Liz Truss never existed.
Oh my goodness. Oh, cruelly done, Dominic. That is our business correspondent, Dominic O'Connell.
It is 9:30. It was all a dream. It's Dallas. British politics as Dallas. There we go. That was Dominic O'Connell, Bond O'Connell. There, he keeps us up to date with all that. We're all such experts in that now, aren't we?
Totally.
I just feel uncomfortable not talking about the 30-year yield for gilts.
No, don't feel uncomfortable. Don't worry. We'll be talking about that for many months to come, probably. But hopefully in a good way. It's now 9:30. Let's get the news with Rachel Drew.